Have you ever looked at a project but didn't quite know where to start? Or maybe you had one specific task in a project but you had no idea how you were going to get to the final result? Or maybe a task just seemed a little too daunting for you to take care of, so you kept putting it off and putting it off until towards the end, even though you needed that feature or that mechanic implemented immediately so you can work on other things. Well, what you need to do before you even touch any code, or before you touch any of that design, what you need to do is actually break your project down. You need to break it down into smaller, bite-sized chunks. That way you can actually think everything through completely, know exactly what it is you want to do, and how you're going to get there. Now, you may not necessarily know the exact detail on getting there, but you know the general idea of getting there. So, for example, if you want to create a login screen, visually you're going to need 2 text boxes, one for your username, one for your password, and then you're going to have 1 or 2 buttons for your login or your sign up, either interchangeable or having them both displayed there at the same time. So visually that's what it's going to take. It's very simple. And if we were to run this, you see, very simple to run something like that. But some people may just stop there. They might not actually think about how to do a registration or how to do a login system. And they'll actually just stop there and they're okay, login system, and then, they'll just move on from there. But what you need to go into is you need to actually go into some of the details. So, for example, with this, what I wanted to have individual accounts. If I just sign in real quick. So I wanted to have the ability to register different accounts. Each account can have their own little profile color. That's a little bit of fun customization that you can identify just at a quick glance. But more importantly, I wanted each user to be able to have their own list of recipes. Now, with that, of course, you open it up and you're going to have your instructions, your steps that you've written down and recorded. And I didn't select one, but you would have an image here on the left-hand side. So if we go to new, you see we can go ahead and we can select an image. Any image that we wanted. Alright, and then of course you give your recipe a name and you put your steps in there and you can go ahead and save it. So, let's call this best hash browns. And you can save it and then you can continue just having your different lists here of items. So that's the general idea of what I wanted. But then you got to think about it. You got to break that down. First up, before we can get into that, because you want to store all your recipes and everything per user, because you want to have multiple users. So all of that stuff comes right back to your login screen. And to log in, you need to register. So you got to think about how you can do a registration first and how you're going to store that data. And by thinking about that, at the same time, you can think about how you're going to store the data from your recipes at the same time, right? So when you come in, you might not think about it, or it may seem obvious to some of you, but regardless, you come in, you register, you need to be able to check whether or not a username already exists or not. And if you're going to log in, as you would have seen earlier, not only do you have to check the username, but you also need to check the password. And if you see, this is about to get longer as soon as I hit the login button. And that's because we're actually encrypting the password to increase security that much more, or increase security better. Neither of those sound right. But then you also have a decision to make as well on there. And we're just at the login section. Like, are you going to store this locally? Or is this going to be somewhere up on a database somewhere? So we have all these decisions going on, and we're only at the login screen. But if we break everything down, we can decide, is this going to be a local storage, or is it going to be a database storage? Are we going to store our info as like a dictionary, or are we going to store it in some other way? And then, of course, when it comes to this, since I wanted a list, we're going to do this in the form of an item list, or am I going to use a VBox and just insert things into it? what are we going to do? We have different options when we're coming into this list. And it doesn't just apply to applications like this either. We can take a look at other games in that here as well. So if we come in and we take a look at, I believe this should take us in. Yes. Right, we can take a look at just a normal game like this. Like we have a top-down game. It's a standard RPG. We can take a look at, we need movement for this, right? So we want an RPG. For that, we need to have characters. Well, characters, we can break that down. We need at least our main character, and we're going to need NPCs. And then we can break those down further. NPCs need to be able to have dialogue. And if you're having an RPG, you're probably going to have a shop. So then you can break the shop down into different things. Movement, going back to the character, decide what kind of movement you're going to have. We're going to have 4-way movement here, but the player can actually move in 8 directions. And then are you going to have turn-based combat in a completely different scene? Or are you going to have combat that's going to be action-based? You know, like you would see in something like a Zelda game. We have a mouse cursor here, which most people probably wouldn't even think about, but you got that as an option. Quests. Are you just going to make the player remember them and think of them? Or are you going to be able to, are you going to keep track of it and have some kind of quest journal going on? And if you're going to have a quest journal, how are you going to break that up? And then your inventory, how do you want your inventory to look? How is that going to work, right? So you got all different decisions that you can take, and then just break it down into smaller and smaller chunks. That way, everything can be a lot more manageable, and everything can be broken down into more bite-sized chunks. So take this active quest here, for example. We want a description box over here, so that's just going to be some text. And that's going to be based on what we're clicking here. So we're going to have to store or have all of our quests listed somewhere. And in this case, we also have an icon, so we can store an icon that goes with it. Icon and a name. And then, based off of this looks like it could be an item list that's just going vertical. And then you click up. And then when you click on it, we can see the description. And then, of course, we have our little exit button to back out of this. And with that, we already know that we need a quest, a database of all of our quests stored somewhere. We know that we need, for each quest, we need our icon, a title, and a description. And visually, we know we need some kind of list to keep track, and some kind of text box to display information about our quest. Oh, and then we need actually one more parameter with our, unless we separate another way, which is another option. Because we need to know whether it's an active quest or if it's a completed quest. So, you can see just going into the quest option there, we have a lot of options into that. So just, like I said, just break everything down as much as possible into as many bite-sized manageable chunks as you can, and you'll find that your projects can become a lot easier. You're going to make more progress, and you're not going to lose as much motivation going through, because you're not going to get stuck on the bigger picture, because you have these smaller items that once they come together, they create that bigger picture that you imagined to begin with. Alright, so that'll do it for this video, and remember, if you have any recommendations or suggestions or something that you want to see or know how to do, go ahead and leave them down in the comments, and we can take a look at them in another video.